on this lovely warm day. It's great to have you all and see some new faces, so thank you for coming. Before I start, what we like to do is record these sessions so that we can then share them online afterwards with our social media. So for anyone who can't participate, at least they can listen back at a time of their own convenience. So is there anybody that has any, we prefer we didn't record before we get started? You can use the chat box if you'd, but no, so I'll take that as an approval, so that'd be fab. So Sophie, thanks for recording that. So what we usually do is we'll go around, sorry Lady Marie, I'm kind of doing what you
It's fine, fine.
Lady Marie,
it makes sense, just carry on.
But so I thought I'm still Lady Marie's moment here. So what we usually do is we'll just quickly go around, say our names, say where we're from, and obviously you don't have to say where you're from if you don't want to, but then everyone really knows who we all are, and obviously we've got names. Sometimes it is helpful to hear people pronounce their own names. I personally struggle with that sometimes. So I'll kick it off. I'm Breda, I'm the Communications Manager at SIA, and welcome everyone, nice to see you. So Sophie, everyone can see you, Sophie, can't they? Because you've got your camera on. So
yeah,
Sophie,
I'm Sophie, and I work in Breda's team in the communications at SIA.
I'm Karen Biggs, one of the nurse specialists at SIA, covering the Midlands, which is the area from Wales, Stafford, right across to Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire, right down to Northamptonshire as well. So I'm one of 4 nurses within SIA.
I'm Simon Pennell, I'm the Advocacy Manager at SIA. I'm also spinal cord injured, so I'm here wearing 2 hats, as it were.
I'm Lady Marie Malcolm, and I'm one of the support network officers covering London. So I cover King's College, and I've got tetraplegic.
Thanks, Lady Marie.
Michelle?
And then, so do we want to start at the top right-hand corner? So if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, Stephen Burns, SIA Healthcare Outreach Manager, and I work national. So yeah, just a small area I cover, but I do enjoy it.
Nice to see you today, Stephen. Okay. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, Breda. I disappeared during what you're asking us to do, but I guess you're asking for my name, Dan, and I work for the Spinal Injury Association.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go around people associated with SIA first. So Pete.
Yeah, hi there. Pete Hamilton. I'm one of the trustees.
Thank you. Faisal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Faisal Hussain from Leicestershire, spinal cord injured for 31 years, tetraplegic, and for the last 3 years, I've been a trustee of the Spinal Injuries Association, and for the last year, senior vice chair, just for your background.
Thank you. Michelle.
Hello, my name's Michelle Howard. I'm a long-standing trustee of the SIA, been a trustee now for nearly 30 years. I'm a tetraplegic. I've been paralysed since the age of 16, and I'm 38 years into my injury now. And I'm in Swindon. Yay! Shout out to Swindon.
Thanks, Michelle. And we have Rupert.
Yes, hello. So I'm Rupert Earl. I'm currently the chair of trustees. I've done 40 years, Michelle, as a spinal cord injured person. 41, very nearly. I'm currently on bed rest, so that's why I'm not on video. I didn't want to subject you to the intimacies of my boudoir, but I am here.
Thank you. And Martin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a C5 tetraplegic, injured 1994. Had my 1994 the accident, C5 tetraplegic, live in Lincolnshire.
Brilliant, thank you. And then it'd be great if we could just have a quick hello from obviously the researchers we've got here, if you're happy to just say hi. Yeah, perfect.
So my name's Alia. I'm going into my second year of nutrition, and I'm currently based in the south of France.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next. My name is Abby. I'm from the US, and I'm going into my third year of molecular genetics at King's. And yeah, I'm leading the team along with Steph, so I'll just pass that on to her then, and then we'll go in. Yeah, but thank you so much for having us.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I'm Steph, and I'm going into my third year of biomedical science. I'll pass over to Remy.
Hi, I'm Remy. I'm going into my third year of biomedical engineering, and I'm currently in Essex.
Lovely, nice to see you.
I'll go next. My name is Sonia, and I'm going into my third year of biomedical science at King's as well, and I'm currently in Russia.
Oh wow, welcome.
I'll go next. I'm Morgan. I'm also from the US, and I'm going into my second year of biomedical science.
Lovely to meet you.
I think I'll go next. Hi, I'm Harsh. I'm based in London, and I'm going into my third year of biochemistry.
My name's Gonzalo. I'm going to my third year of biomedical engineering, and right now I'm in Brussels.
Brilliant.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi, I'm Ella. I'm doing my third year of biomedical engineering, and I'm from Swindon as well.
Hey, there you go.
Yay! I knew I wasn't the only person from Swindon.
Fab. I think we have gone through everyone. Simon?
Hi, my name's Simon Jones. I work for a care company based in Brighton, and we do specialist care provision for people with spinal injuries. So it's I'm fairly new to the role, so this is more of a fact-finding mission for me to find out more about people with spinal injuries and how we can potentially help going forward. So,
Brilliant. Well, welcome today. So, Pete, do you want to say something? I think you're on mute at the moment, Pete. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I missed like Dan. I missed the bit at the start. So so I'm C5-6, and I've been injured for about 9 years, and I'm in Salisbury.
Fab, thank you, Pete. Brilliant. Well, I'm chuffed we've got such an international cafe today, which is brilliant. So what I'll do is, obviously, today we're here to allow, obviously, you as researchers to put some questions across to people who are living with spinal cord injury. I have shared around, I think with most of the people on here, the questions that you sent across. So I thought, Ali, if I give you, if you want to do it, or if there's another member of your team that literally just wanted to say for a few moments the purpose of your research, and obviously why you're all here today, and then we can get started on the Q&A.
So basically, we are all in this project called iGEM, which is an international genetically engineered machine competition, and it runs amongst universities, postgraduates, and high school students. And we've decided to take part of this as representing King's College London, and we're focusing on creating a muscle fit protein adapted scaffolding to be put into the body. And personally, we have a big focus on ourselves as students as on spinal cord injuries, but our main idea is going off of a muscle fit protein that could be used as a biocompatible adhesive within the body. I don't know if my team leaders, Abby and Steph, want to elucidate on that.
Yeah, this is like a global competition that we've participated in as a university for 3 years now. The main aim is looking into something that involves synthetic biology and genetic engineering. And we choose a project that we kind of develop throughout the year, and then we'll present it in autumn. Typically we present it in Boston, but this year, since it's all virtual, we'll be presenting it virtually. So yeah, kind of one of the main that we're looking into as a potential application of our scientific research is spinal cord injury. So that's why we wanted to participate in this call today, to learn a little bit more about the condition, and also to help guide us to providing different solutions to the issue that are not purely scientific. So looking at a more holistic approach to this issue, I would say. So yeah, that's pretty much the main reason why we're participating here, and what we're planning to do with our project. I would like to note that because it is student-led, and because it's all done remotely, as you can tell, we have a really international team and we're all across the world. So we're doing this all remotely. It is very theoretical, and it's just something that we're kind of designing this year. And yeah, that's basically a summary. I don't know if Steph has anything she would like to add to that.
Definitely. We'd just like to thank every one of you for letting us join today and for having us sit in. It's been really nice to meet you all so far.
No, you're more than welcome, and hopefully you'll be able to take a lot away. So Michelle, did you want to say something?
Can I just ask a question then? So getting back to, sorry, I've forgotten the first lady who talked, who was explaining about the muscle protein or whatever. Could somebody just in layman's terms just explain to me what that is, or potentially what benefits it might have? Is that something you could address now or not? Am I?
Yeah, we can briefly talk about it. So the protein that we're planning on using, so if you muscles as in the sea creature, so these.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so these organisms, they can stick to surfaces really well, even in turbulent waters. And they do these through proteins that are on their feet, and these feet are what allow them to attach to different surfaces. So what we're planning on doing is taking one of those proteins and using it to create this adhesive that can be used for a variety of biomedical applications. But its advantages is that it can help allow for different implantations to stay fixated, and to help create an environment that can help encourage regrowth and improvement. So that's basically why we're looking into this protein in particular, because it's super sticky. And it's also like a protein that is the first one to touch a surface. So it's a very adhesive, very sticky protein. And that's why we're looking into it.
That's really helpful, thank you. Because when you said muscle, I presumed you meant muscles in the body.
You can eat it. You can go to a restaurant and eat it. So it has two applications.
Excellent. Good. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
No, of course. If you have any questions like throughout, yeah, we'd be happy.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And as I say, it's brilliant to have you all here. So what we'll do is I'll go through the list of questions. We've got 7 in total. This cafe usually lasts for about an hour, but if it goes over slightly, most people usually are happy to do that. And obviously I want everybody to be able to contribute to answering all the questions. So what we've done is, if we've got everybody on mute, if you want to answer a question, if you use the raise hand function, if you know how to do that, or you could put your name into the chat function, so then I just know who to come to, but I will check in periodically to make sure that everybody is able to contribute. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the first question, and that is, what strategies have you found most helpful in regards to living with a spinal cord injury? So is there anyone who'd like to kick off?
So I'll give it a go. Routine is the best thing for me. Making sure everything is done, because I have such a detailed routine. If it's done properly, I'm in less pain during the day. So it's the same thing day in, day out because of my level of injury. But routine is the best thing for me. Getting everything done exactly how I like it to stop the pain during the day and sleeping during the night.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Who'd like to go next? Michelle, do you want to go?
Yes, so very much like Martin, routine is really important. And coupled with routine, is having carers who understand my condition and know my routine, because that all adds to me being able to live an independent life as easily as I possibly can. Together with that is having the environment around me that's adapted to my needs. So having where I live is accessible. I've got the right equipment that I need. So I've got a profiling electric bed. I've got an overhead hoist. I have an electric wheelchair. I have a car that's accessible for me. You know, the list goes on. And then just one more point added on top of all of that is having a good support network around you. So very importantly, family, friends, colleagues that you work with, all of that helps you to be able to lead an independent life without too much getting in the way of that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. So I should have said, if anyone wants to know whether thumbs up, on the bottom of the screen, there's a tab that says reactions. So if you click on there, you'll see there's a thumbs up in there. So Rupert, would you like to go next? You're on mute at the moment.
Sorry, I'm on an iPad and it's hard to actually do it in a lying position. Okay, so I've done about 41 years now as a spinal cord injured person. And obviously, if you ask me what strategies I've employed over that time, it's changed over time. But I guess the overarching strategy would be one of adaptability and the willingness to embrace innovation and new concepts, new designs, new ways of doing things. So I'm always on the lookout for advances in science and technology that will assist me. I remember back when I was newly injured, my mother coming home excitedly from a meeting where she'd met an electronics engineer from the local university, and she was talking about this thing called a chip. And you know, it seemed so abstract in those days. We're talking about 1979, 1980, and now look where we are. You know, the ability to communicate internationally by video link across the world, and the iPad for me has absolutely revolutionised my life. And I've adapted and adjusted to that, and I use it to absolutely all the time, nearly. But it doesn't stop there. So whether it be environmental controls, whether it be technologies for mattresses, for cushions, for support services to prevent getting pressure ulcer. I'm currently on a steering group for a novel catheter study at Nottingham University, where we're looking to design a catheter that will stop people getting UTIs, urinary tract infections, for example. So all the time pushing boundaries and looking to adapt and adjust would be my overall message.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rupert. Faisal, you popped your phone back up. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say to support what Rupert's just kind of said around adaptability. I would certainly add resilience to that, Breda. But also, as more information becomes available and how we access information also helps inform our strategies, and also how we change those strategies and how we adapt those to our lives in changing circumstances, because our lives don't stay in a static position. So they're evolving, they're changing. So as new information, new technologies become available, we then learn to adapt with those and utilize them in that way to better fulfill our own lives as we go forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Faisal.
So the problem is with that, it's the expense. But getting into new technologies or anything to do with disabilities costs a fortune, which is why I design most of my own stuff.
Thanks, Martin. Pete, you had your thumb up.
Yeah, so a couple of things. As well as staying flexible, like Rupert was saying, planning ahead is important, because not all the places you might want to go are necessarily accessible. So, you know, checking with restaurants that you might be going to, planning to go on holidays and stuff, you know, a lot of, I mean, and some of us are less capable than others. So, like I'm not able to transfer out of my chair into another chair or into bed myself. So I need to, if I go places on holiday, I need there to be extra equipment. So There's a lot of that kind of thing going on. And secondly, another important strategy is just staying busy and staying positive and trying to do as much positive things and staying as productive as possible, because I think a lot of people do get in that situation, and I think that because they struggle to after they're so important to find a place again and be productive.
Thanks, Pete. Stephen, earlier you had a thumbs up. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I did. I just want to concur with what everyone else has just said. Certainly in the early days, I've been 37 years as a paraplegic, and certainly one of my strategies was not to plan too far in advance, you know, from your everyday sort of living. But that's completely flipped now, 37 years on. I do like to plan in advance, you know, several months in advance. And I think probably that's down to the type of job that I do. You know, but yeah, I just wanted to concur what, you know, the rest of the guys have all said.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. Dan, you had a thumbs up?
Sorry, I didn't know how to unmute myself. I think it's less a strategy, it's more probably something you become. I think you have to become a problem solver, and you have to be quite open-minded to the answer to a problem. So I've got a toddler at the moment. I've got a baby on the way due in October, and becoming a father suddenly throws up a whole load of new opportunities. As Faisal was saying, you know, your life completely changes. And then how am I going to pick this baby up off the floor? I can pick an inanimate object that I can drop on the floor and that's fine. But how am I going to do that to a baby? How am I going to get a baby over the edge of a cot down into the cot and pick it out again? And you start looking at kind of everyday objects and thinking, oh, I might be able to use that or use this. So as I say, it's not really a strategy. I think you learn how to see opportunities in everything to solve the day-to-day problems that you've got.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. That's helpful. So before we move on to the next question, was there anything that anybody else wanted to add to that? So we've got 7 questions, so okay, we'll move on to the next one. And that is, so what is the best advice you would give to a new carer for somebody living with a spinal cord injury? So we also, in the UK, we call personal assistants, rather than carers, a terminology thing in the UK. But yeah, we usually use the term PAs. So if you ever see that, it means carers. So Michelle, you have your thumbs up?
Yeah, so the best advice I would give a new carer is to spend time getting to know their client and understanding what their needs are, and ask and ask and ask as many questions as you feel it's necessary for you to understand what you're being asked to do. And no question is silly, and in fact sometimes the silly, what you consider the silly questions are the most vital, and you've really got to build up that relationship with the client in order for both the client and the carer to have the reassurance that you know they're going to be able to manage together.
Brilliant, thanks Michelle. Pete, did you want to go next?
Yeah, so just adding to what Michelle said there about the relationship, like the worst thing I had when I first had my injury was people coming in uniforms and changing all the time and almost treating it like a kind of formalized role. You know, the best PAs I have are people that I can have a laugh with, people who you know, they just wear what they like, they just act themselves. I mean, I'm looking for a friend as well as someone to, you know, get me up in the morning and get me dressed. So I would say that's pretty important. And then also, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, a lot of people have had a good bit of training before, but then you know, they've got no confidence to, you know, they ask, is this okay? Is that okay? And I always just say, just go ahead. I'll correct you if you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, Kate. Rupert, I can see in the chat box you'd say you'd like to speak.
Yeah, okay. So for me, it was quickly to disabuse them of the notion that they are a carer, because if they think it's all about care, which is delivering, washing, showering, toileting, preparing food, that sort of thing, think again. PAs, it encompasses my whole life, so it's everything. Is what I want to do, it's what I want to achieve. I want to go on a holiday, I want to travel, I want to be able to be driven when I can't drive myself for any reason. I need support to get to social environments and interactions. I need support to get into professional interactions, whether that be coming down to a meeting as a chair of SIA, or to a meeting, an event, for example, a fundraising event, all of those things. But PAs in my life can find themselves one day doing fundamental care for a couple of hours in the morning, and later on doing some gardening or getting on the roof and painting a window upwards and downwards. So, you know, it covers a whole range of things. The other thing is that you need to be aware that they're kind of sole workers, and so they are very much on their own when they're actually with you, and they don't have the backup of a team necessarily. And I just reiterate what I think somebody else said: don't be afraid to ask questions. There is no such thing as a daft question, and you can explain as much as you like about how you can't, you have no sensation on the skin below the level of your lesion, but nevertheless, that is a concept which people find incredibly hard to grasp, and they still will say, well, you know, they'll touch you somewhere where you can't feel and say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got cold hands, and so forth. And you know, it's you can't assume that because you've told them as much as you think they need to know about your injury and your needs, that they really comprehend it all. It is a complex subject.
Brilliant, thanks, Rupert. Lady Marie, you've put on here that you'd like to speak as well.
Yes, please. When I employ my own PAs, I've been injured 28 years, and whenever I am interviewing, the first thing I would say to them is, whatever you think you know about care work, leave it at the door. Because once you come in, I would like things to be done the way I would like it done. So if you're able to follow instructions, then we will get on brilliantly. It's because we're all different, and as it's been said already, no matter if you have similar injuries, we're not the same people. And one of the other things I think also the carer needs to realize that they can't be a wallflower. For me, I do not want carers that are wallflowers. They have to be able to hold their own, depending on where you are, in whatever situation, because they're going to be accompanying you wherever you're going. They have to be able to integrate quite easily into your life. And I say to them that you are my hands and my feet. So I think I then dictate, the word dictate sounds a bit strong, but I then say how I would like things done. So if they're able to adapt in that way, then everything will be fine.
Brilliant, thank you, Lady Marie. It's really, really valid points you've made there. So I'll come to Stephen and Simon. Martin, a while ago, did you put thumbs up as well?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah, I've had many carers throughout the years. I have a 24/7 care, so there's somebody here all the time. I've had carers come and leave really quickly. There's a 3-day shadow shift we use to try and get them trained up to just be able to free to work with them reasonably quickly, because it takes such a long time for my routines. Some carers come in and say it's totally unacceptable work, what they're doing. And yet I've had 4 carers that have been with me for over 10 years. I think one of my carers was 14 years. Her sister was with me for 10, and the one who's just left was with me for 10. The one who's been with me now is, we've actually got a different team, completely different team again, which I've had to train people up. It's very frustrating for me. So I'd advise carers, just put up with a shitty mood for a few weeks because I'm explaining everything 24/7. It takes, for explain to a new carer, it's 2.5 hours to get up at least, 2 to 3 hours to get back to bed of constant talking, explaining things in immense detail. Even though they've seen the shadows, I still need to run through it. And just be patient. If they think they want to know things, or they think they're doing something in their own way, just don't. Just wait for me to explain it, and don't try and preempt what I'm going to do, because it's just a waste of everybody's time. They try and do something in the wrong way, and then you're having to say, no, don't do it that way. You have to do it in this way to make it easier for everybody. And I get a lot of overpowering carers who think they know what they're doing, which they might do. They might know what they're doing with different spinal injured people or whatever. But for me, I might do things in a slightly different way that doesn't hurt me or something, or doesn't do this, or does something that it doesn't do when you do it a different way. So my thing to carers is just be patient. Give it a couple of weeks, and then if you don't like it, then leave. Because after a couple of weeks, it settles down. And because it's the same thing day in, day out, it's not that entertaining for carers, especially now we're being stuck in the house, depending what I'm doing in the house and depending what a carer is able to do. Because I have an agency, they're not allowed to do a lot of things I would like them to do. Like I need to put a new brake cylinder on the car, but they're definitely not allowed to do that. So it's just looking after me and, say, being my hands and feet. But again, I'm limited to what I can ask them to do. Quite limited, because I mean, simple stuff that I do all the time, they can't do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. Before I move on, I'm going to ask Stephen to go next. I know we've had a few newcomers join. So the question that people are reflecting on at the moment is, what advice would you give to a new PA looking at assisting somebody with a spinal cord injury? So we're just going through the answers. So Stephen, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I just put 4 words down there. Listen to your client.
Yeah, perfect. Was that in, oh, sorry, did you put it in the group chat? Brilliant, thank you. Simon, did you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I work for a company that provides carers, I just wanted to say to everyone that it's vitally important that us as the care providers, that we sit down and actually listen to the clients with exactly what they need. You know, we've had situations here where we've gone in and, you know, the care has not been right for, you know, as Martin was saying, that, you know, it's finding the right person. You know, Lady Maria said it's finding the right person to fit with the client, so that you know, it's having the person with a good sense of humour, doing what they need to do. There's obviously certain things they can and can't do, and I think unless they're a mechanic and can fix brake pads and things like that for people, then, you know, so be it. But, you know, it's vitally important from our point of view as well that we do provide the right carer and listen to the client with exactly what they need. So I just wanted to back up everyone else's view on that. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Fab. Okay, did anybody else want to add to that before we move on to the next question at all? Faisal, did you want to say something?
Just to wrap it up with all the other things that everybody said and are all very pertinent, I guess accessing specialist training, whether it's being provided by the client and existing carers, PAs, or accessing specialist training through organisations like ours, I think is crucial. Because at least in that way, when a new personal assistant or carer goes into an environment, they will at least be forewarned about the type of things they are most likely to encounter. And I think that's really helpful, along with you know, accessing yourself with the right kind of resources, reading up and looking at YouTube videos. I think it's just very helpful. So just kind of the kind of thing that most of us would do in any job situation. If we were new to it, we'd look into it, we'd read into it, and get as much facts and figures before we went there. So at least when you go there, you think, oh, crikey, I wasn't expecting that. So there's less room to be shock and awed. Thanks, Breda.
Can I jump in before we change? So sorry I joined late. I've been busy. I just got on the back end of what Martin was saying there about the carers jumping in and not giving you time to explain stuff and all that. I go direct payment now, and I've just recently had to interview for new members of staff. And as you say, you've got to explain the ins and outs of your care and all that. And I found I've had to start with the most awkward parts of the care, personal care, the most invasive part. And I found as soon as I mentioned that, people's faces have changed and all that. They realise it's not a typical care job, and it's not as simple as just being there and helping out with the day-to-day. And I've just finally hired someone, whether or not when the practical side comes to it, she might turn tail and run, but seems okay at the moment. But I don't know if I've got anything else to add, because I think Martin and all that said the same thing, is as long as the patient listens how you want things doing, because as stated, most spinal injury is completely different. I may like being, even though I'm the same level as someone else, I may like position or manhandle differently to someone else. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think what Martin said
Brilliant.
was great. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for joining us. Nice to see you. Brilliant. So number 3. So besides therapeutic support, what weight would you give holistic therapies in your recovery? So, for example, massage therapies, diet, supplements, etc. Is there any other forms of holistic therapies that you think would benefit somebody recovering from a spinal cord injury?
Shiatsu. I've tried shiatsu, and wow, I felt like I grew about another 2 inches. It was really good, because they really worked on the neck area. And when I finally sat back in my wheelchair, I felt completely at ease, completely different. I actually sat much better. Yeah, that's how it was for me when I tried it. So massage is always good, because we tend to suffer from a lot of tightness in our shoulders. Yeah, and it gets very painful after a while. So all types of those therapies, they're very good. I have no complaints.
Thank you. Gary, you put the thumbs up?
Yeah, I was in the Southport Spinal Unit about 18 months, 2 years ago, and there was a Swedish physiotherapist who'd come over, and she was giving massage to the patients. And apparently that's like it's a staple back in Sweden in their spinal units. And it was amazing. Like say, as Lady says, a wheelchair user or spinal injured person tends to be using muscles that they've never used before, and also muscles that have been laid dormant for potentially months during the acute stages of rehab. So having that massage was not only relaxing but social, and felt like they weren't just going to the gym and then going for their food and then going to bed. It was more of a full, like a holistic approach. Over the years, I've gone for sports massages. I've had acupuncture. I do take supplements specifically for wear and tear on my shoulders. And these are things that when I was injured 17 years ago, and I threw myself into sport. Even though I was performing at a high level, it wasn't encouraged to supplement. So it was just turn up, play basketball. And that's really burnt my shoulders out. So now I'm sort of looking after myself, or trying to recover what I can. So if someone can learn from someone like my mistakes and get in there sooner rather than later, and obviously supplements have to be monitored with medication. So do speak to someone's GP first, especially massage, acupuncture. You can do damage as well as be helpful to somebody. But I personally think the holistic approach is equally important as the medical and clinical side of things.
Brilliant, thank you. And Faisal, I can see you've used the chat to say obviously it's everything in balance, and quite rightly, obviously things don't always work. What works for one may not work for somebody else. And you've had sports physios at different times as well. Gary, Dan has asked what supplements you use. So I don't know if you want to respond in the chat to that one.
I take a lot of supplements, but mostly, well, I get vitamin D now, which is on prescription. And if you don't get vitamin D on prescription, you should do, say, especially if you're not weight bearing. For my shoulders, though, I take glucosamine. It's just one little tablet every day. But yeah, I think you can get it from any of the supermarkets, but I get mine from Simply Supplements.
Brilliant, thanks, Gary. So Rupert, I can see you've asked speakers and Peter, so I'm not sure you went first. Peter, I think you had your thumb up first?
Well, no, I was just going to, yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that immunity is really important for us because, you know, a lot of us tend to get a lot of urinary tract infections, and a lot of us are predisposed to skin problems like pressure ulcers or bed sores, and if you know these things can interact with each other. So I mean, if you've got a urinary tract infection, that can make your skin more sensitive to pressure and stuff, and before you know it, you can have a pressure sore. So taking things to help boost your immunity. I mean, there's you know, in the media and stuff today, there's a lot of people kind of poo-pooing multivitamins and stuff. I take a multivitamin every day, and then stuff like when it comes into the winter, echinacea to keep, you know, colds and flu away, these kind of things. But you know, I'm not a huge believer in a lot of these kind of things. But you know, maintaining overall immunity is really important.
Brilliant, thank you, Pete. Rupert, would you like to go next?
Yes. There's some feedback from somewhere. I think there is an important place for these additional therapies or complementary therapies, certainly. I mean, for instance, I've had shockwave treatment via a physiotherapist on shoulders because you get a buildup of fibrosis in the shoulders over time, calcification of tendons, for example. Standard route through the NHS would just be to ultrasound it, diagnose that you've got it, and then say, well, you're going to live with it. But you know, by going privately, you can get this shockwave treatment, which can fragment and break up, sonicate essentially the calcification on the tendons. And I've had so much more comfortable night's rest since I've had that, for example. Swimming I've always found to be incredibly important, both in terms of the feeling of well-being from being in the water, but also the strengthening effect that has as well. And whether that be, you know, for high-level lesions, to have facilitated swimming options, I think is really important. In terms of the supplements, sort of medicinal or quasi-medicinal supplements, there's increasing evidence that vitamin D is important for the prevention of chest infection, and things like glucosamine. Okay, there's not necessarily that strong evidence for their benefits in terms of joint health, but they don't seem to do any harm, and as long as you don't mind paying for it, then go for it. Use everything that's out there.
Brilliant, thank you, Rupert. I'm going to move on to questions 4. Oh, sorry, given the time. But if there's anything anybody else wanted to add, feel free to use the group chat option as well, because you can put some extra thoughts in there. So the next question, number 4, is how do you recommend educating people on language relevant to injuries and disorders? Are there any particular phrases you prefer that people did or didn't use? Simon, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I think it's broadly speaking, it's very similar to a lot of the comments that have already been made around working with carers. Everybody is an individual, and everybody will have words or phrases or things that they do or don't like. I'm not a big fan of inspirational, but I know that that's quite popular. Certainly not a fan of wheelchair bound. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a wheelchair user, and I would say that to anybody who's potentially or is newly injured. Don't be bound by the chair. It's something that you use. You wouldn't say that somebody is walking stick bound or crutch bound, for example. They use a walking stick or crutches. Or car bound, you know, they use a car to get around the same as you would a wheelchair. But I think it's important, certainly friends and family will know what phrases and words you do and don't like over time, and don't be afraid to tell them. If somebody constantly uses a phrase that you don't like, tell them. That's about it in a nutshell.
Brilliant, thank you. Dan, your hand went up at the same time, so I'll come to you next.
Thanks, Breda. So I think kind of central to language is the idea of the social model of disability. And the social model of disability in a nutshell is that it is society that disables us, not our impairments. So one of the key phrases which is a no-no there, and I know that in other parts of the world they do use it, but is people with disabilities. So what that does is that puts the disability on the individual. So I am a person with a disability. If you fix me and you fix my disability, then hey, everything is hunky-dory. To call me a disabled person, it means I'm a person, but something is disabling me. And that thing which is disabling me is society. So if you remove steps to get into a shop, if you remove a shopkeeper's attitude to me because I've come in as a wheelchair user, then all of a sudden I'm not disabled because I'm getting into that shop in the same way as anyone else is. I'm getting served in the same way that anyone else is because there's no judgment there. And I think that's really important because the language that you use helps you understand really how disability needs to be viewed. So that's a really critical one for me. And I agree with absolutely everything that Simon said as well, certainly. And what you do find as well is everybody who's been spinal cord injured for a certain amount of time has a cocky answer to everything like wheelchair bound. Well, how long have you been in your wheelchair? Well, since about 6 o'clock this morning when I got up. But there's, you know, we've heard it all a million times. But I do think that the social model of disability is just a really important concept for anyone to get if they're looking to answer this question.
Brilliant, thank you, Dan. Michelle, and then I'll come to you, Martin. Oh, Michelle, sorry, you're still on mute at the moment.
So here goes. I might be a bit controversial here, but so I've been disabled since the early 80s when I was 16. And back then, one of the first disability-aware radio programs was one called Does He Take Sugar? Now, the biggest thing I found when I first came home and I was out and about with my parents, people would come up to us who I'd known all my life, and instead of talking to me, they would say to my mum, "How is she? It's so nice to see she's out of hospital now. What's she going to be doing?" And I'd sort of go, "Hello, I am still here. I've still got a voice, I've still got a brain, I can answer for myself." So, and I know it sounds a bit controversial, but I don't get too hung up on what words people use when they address me. I just like somebody to address me as a normal human being, as no different to them, their friends, their family, or anybody else. Just talk to me as if I'm myself, because at the end of the day, that's who I am.
Well said, Michelle, thank you. Martin, would you like to go now?
Yeah, I think it vastly depends on the person. I couldn't care less what anybody says, really. If they want to call me something and I don't like it, I will tell them. But words are just words, so it says different phrases in different countries. I know in America they use phrases that are completely unused over here, same over here, that are completely unused in America. If people are ignorant, then they're ignorant. It's whether I'm disabled or whether I'm against a normal person who can walk around and stuff, it doesn't make any difference. I think it depends on the person. For me, it does make a difference.
Brilliant, thank you, Martin. So I'll move on to the next question. So number 5, so do you believe that the transition of working from home by many companies as a consequence of COVID-19 can benefit people with spinal cord injury by increasing accessibility to work? So do you think working from home has that increased accessibility to work for people with spinal cord injury? Also, I've just, Lady Marie, sorry, I didn't see you had your hand up. Was that with regards to the previous question? Do you want to, sorry, would you want to say?
Yes, it was to the previous question. Because I am involved in so many different things about access and so on, you know, language, it is important for people to be educated on the correct language used, especially agencies who are providing carers, because we get carers not just from Britain, but from across the waters, across Europe. And as Martin said, languages are different. And in America, they use the word handicap. Now, when I hear that, it really, I cringe, because I really don't like to hear that word, because we are not handicapped. We might have a disability, but we're not handicapped. And also to say, for example, that somebody is crippled, I wouldn't like to hear that. You know, there are words, the correct word that can be used, and you may find that an individual who's got a spinal cord injury may have other areas that may have another disability, for example. And, you know, I've had to interview somebody once who wanted to work for a spinal charity, and her comment was, I looked after somebody who was spastic. Now that just, everyone was like, oh man, how could you say that? But she was from another country. Now in the UK, that would be frowned on. You don't use those words. So it's important for any carer who's going to be coming, or anyone, I think it's all to do with education. And if the individual who comes to care for us, for example, is from another country, I think for us as spinal cord injured people, we may have to educate them if they should say something that is incorrect, according to British standards.
Thank you, Lady Marie. Okay, sorry, when I asked the question about working from home, lots of thumbs went up, but I can't remember now where they were on the screen. So would anybody like to go first? Martin?
I don't remember the question now, was it? Oh yeah, COVID. I don't work anyway, but I would say that it has increased the availability for people to work at home, because people are providing computer systems at home so they can do what we're doing now. So I think it has opened up the doors, although I don't work, I'm presuming it has opened up the doors for people who have got disabilities. But that's only going off what I presume would be happening.
Brilliant, thank you. Stephen?
Sorry, yeah, I think, you know, we're having to work more smartly now. I mean, for the past 20 odd years, I've been, as you all know, those of you who know me, plowing up and down the motorway, going into all of the spinal units around the UK. This has been so different for me this past sort of 5 months, having to interact with healthcare professionals via email because you can't get them on the telephone, and with you know, the peer support, you know, to you know, do my job, you know, over, you know, a 5-day period. It's been really difficult trying to fill that time in, but you know, I have been doing it, and I have been hitting target, which has been great. So I think, you know, people, organizations should actually look at people, you know, with disabilities and say, there's an opportunity, you know, for somebody with a disability to come into, you know, a part-time or full-time role. So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Faisal, did you put your thumb up? Yeah.
Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, I think the question, I think it's really interesting because I've been very fortunate because I've worked for over 25 years in the public sector. So local authorities and then the NHS during that period. And we were one of the pilot organisations back in 2008 when I worked in local government in the West Midlands, where we piloted home working, or what we then started calling agile working. And I remember having conversations with my private sector colleagues who were quite quick to come back with put downs saying like, well, you know, you work very easily and flexibly in the public sector, you don't work in the same rigor with the same kind of metrics, key performance indicators, etc. And actually what I was able to do as the head of service leading that pilot program, I was able to pull out all the stats and graphs and charts about the levels of productivity and the level of ownership and the level of performance that had improved over a 18-month pilot period, to the point where the business case actually meant the whole council in 2010 enabled home working, agile working for people who needed it or wanted it, dependent on business needs, etc. So that's as a backdrop. Very briefly, we had a pre-COVID world, we've had during COVID world, and we're going to have a post-COVID world. Speaking to colleagues in the private sector who had previously never been able or facilitated or enabled to work from home, suddenly found companies like HSBC, Barclays, immediately saying, we're going to make sure the infrastructure is in place, so from the beginning, 1st of April, you'll be able to work from home. Yet, only a year earlier, they were saying, there is no way on this planet we can put the infrastructure in place cost effectively for you to work from home. And it just shows you how a pandemic can actually flip things. So as some philosophers said somewhere along the lines, let's not waste a crisis. And I think what we've now got is the ability for people to work much more flexibly and agilely. And that does open the world for more spinal cord injured people to work in jobs that they potentially thought were out of their reach.
Mm. Dan, thank you, Faisal. Dan, would you like to go next?
Sorry, I've got a problem unmuting. Agree with everything that Faisal said. I think one of the really interesting things for all employees in the future, given that now we're all going to be able to work from home better, is actually it opens up a potentially a world job market. So one of the issues that we have with employing people in head office at the Spinal Injuries Association is that we're based in Milton Keynes. Now, if we're trying to hire someone who is based in the office, you have a catchment area of commutable distance to Milton Keynes. If you're looking for a spinal cord injured person, and my role is specifically a spinal cord injured person, you're then limiting your catchment area to commutable distance plus how many spinal cord injured people live in that area and how many are able to do the job. But it cuts both ways. If I want to go and work for another charity, and I don't, if anyone's getting worried or excited about that, then once again, who is within my catchment area to commute to? But feasibly, I could now get a job with a charity in Uganda or out of Mongolia, or well, Mongolia, or Scotland, or you know, Manchester, anywhere I couldn't commute to now. Theoretically, I could now work for. So I think that's really interesting. It doesn't only enable me to work; it enables me to have a much wider access to a much wider job market.
Thank you, Dan. So Pete and Gary. So Pete, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Well, I'm coming from a perspective that I'm self-employed and I've worked from home, you know, for the last, well, 5 years. And I'm a software developer, so I work by myself developing software for people who find me on my website and employ me to do projects for them. I've never yet met in person a single one of my clients. A couple of them that have become, you know, quite long-term. They've become long-term clients, and I've become very friendly with. You know, I'll tell them about my disability, but other than that, none of them even know that I've got that I've got a disability. And I think if someone were to know that I'm tetraplegic, I can't use my fingers, you know, and I'm supposed to be developing software for them, I think it would put them off. So from that point of view, I think, you know, it can be an advantage. Now, secondly, I wouldn't be able to go and, you know, probably make it in time for, you know, 9 o'clock start at an office, because it takes me probably 2.5 to 3 hours to get ready in the morning, to, you know, have my shower, go to the toilet, get dressed. These things all take, you know, a lot longer. And if I had to add commute time to that as well, I mean, I know quite a lot of people who do that, and they're out their bed at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and you know, it's just not good for you, especially if your skin is sensitive and you need to get back into bed for an hour in the middle of the day. You know, you wouldn't be able to do these things if you had to go to an office. So it's probably the only way I could work, and I love my work. So yeah, I think it opens up work to a lot more people.
Thank you, Pete. Gary, you were next, and then Faisal will come to you.
Yeah, just additionally to that, a lot of people that are service users, the issue they have is returning to work. And a lot of the times it is a case of, well, we can't go back to work because, you know, I'm in a 4th floor office and access to work can't feasibly put in a stair lift all the way up. So this flexible working has actually opened up the parameters for a lot of people for returning to work and maintaining that sustained employment, because service users, you know, as much as trying to get your head around a life with a spinal cord injury is terrible, real life worries still continue. I'm going to pay the mortgage. How do I pay the bills, etc., etc. I don't want to get kicked out of my house. I need to do so. So yeah, I think COVID's actually put more pressure on existing employees, not only to, as it's stated, then for them to make reasonable adjustments, but that's usually been applied to reasonable adjustments in the workplace. Well, now, why can't your workplace be your home? So make the reasonable adjustments and allow that individual, especially if you're going to access to work, to provide with all the tech, the equipment, the phones, the internet, the laptop, the assistive technology, and you can then, as long as you can obviously still perform the element of your duties which you're being allocated, then I think this is, I say, a blessing in disguise, and that moving forward will enable us to have these discussions with employers, to, especially ones who aren't encouraging about getting someone back to work. If there is an option to get someone to work from home because accessibility is their reasoning, I can only see it being a good thing. Sorry, I was slightly distracted as well by Simon Pinnell's being attacked by a dog, having his face licked. Sorry if anyone else saw that.
Thank you for that, Gary.
I thought I got away with that. No, he thinks he knows that it's dinner time because my other half just come home, and it's usually me that feeds them. So hence why he'd assaulted me. Apologies for that interruption, guys. Thank you for flagging it, Gary. I owe you one.
Just in case anyone missed it, it had to be brought up.
And before I come to Faisal, Rupert's put a question in the chat box. So because I'm conscious of time, I didn't know if anybody wanted to reply within the chat box to Rupert whilst Faisal speaks, and then we can come back to it. Or
it's
Rupert,
not important main discussion, Frida, don't worry.
Okay. So sorry, Faisal, did you want to go next?
Yeah, it was just on the back of the discussion around agile working. One of the things, as I say, I've been very fortunate, let's say, for the last 25 years to be able to work agilely already. But the other thing, as a consequence of COVID, has been the level of participation that I've been personally able to take part in has also increased. So a really simple example. We have a lot of breakfast briefings for the NHS in Manchester, Leeds or London. I live in Leicestershire. And those breakfast briefings usually start at 9:30 and they last no more than an hour and a half. The cost involved for my trust to send me as a member of the board to those is exponential. You know, it's £150. You know, if I want to stay the night before to be there on time, it's just a no-no. this way, we're able to log on at 9:15, join in the discussion for an hour and a half, and I've been able to participate in around 60 events since March the 23rd that I would not have participated in. And the ability to share and learn and exchange ideas with my colleagues from all over the United Kingdom, minus Scotland, because they have a different healthcare system, has been absolutely phenomenal. So I think that reach has also been really worth noting, and I think that's something I hope will long continue.
Brilliant. Thanks for your contribution there, Faisal. Okay, so I'm conscious that we're running over time, but this is really good conversation, so I hope everyone will stay. So the next question: do you believe enough is being done to include people with spinal cord injury in higher education and workplaces, and how has this impacted your mental health? So do you believe enough is being done to include people with spinal cord injury in higher education and workplaces, and how has this impacted your mental health? Simon, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll kick off before I get attacked again by the dog. One of the instances that I've come across in my role as the advocacy manager is with a fairly high level tetraplegic attending university in receipt of a care package, but the university and the clinical commissioning group were struggling to agree on the reasonable adjustments to enable the individual to continue his studies at the university, including the provision of just simple provision of accommodation for the carer to be living close to the person who they're caring to enable him to carry on with his studies. It's taken about 6 months of battle with the family and the university, but I think there's some progress been made there. That's only one example, and it may not be true, but it's just one example that's flagged up to us that those sorts of provisions, it's not just about putting ramps in place, it's about looking at the wider implications for the individual's care needs and so that they can continue their studies as they need to.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Did anybody else want to respond to that question? Faisal? And then Lady Mirror, come to you.
Yeah, I think I put in the chat box, there are some great practices out there, but they are very few and far between. When I had my accident in 1989, it was during a year out from university. So I was in my final year of studies, taking a year out to work and travel. Suddenly finding myself landing in a position where I was spinal cord injured, going back to study in London, and at the inaccessibility of my campus there was really, really difficult. Now, the university tried to look at accommodating me, and it was just nigh on impractical to make the level of adjustments that were needed. So this is back in, I went to, reintegrated into and re-entered education in 1992. University on my doorstep, University of Leicester, basically took me as a transfer student and pulled out all the stops on a campus that was on a bit of a hill, small hill, on a park. What they basically said was, you put your application in, let's get you here, we're going to do our utmost to make everything accessible. So what they did was, where it wasn't possible to make things accessible, they rotated the lectures, the tutorials around me. They moved the whole group around me to be in an accessible venue. So that's what I mean, there's some great practices, but what we still don't see, and that was nearly 30 years ago, what we still don't see is that level of commitment in organizations. And as you move up beyond higher education, it becomes harder for employers, because if they employ more than, I think it's 250 employees, then they've got to make contributions to reasonable adjustment. And that's when they start, oh, well, we don't have the costs, etc. I think if you get the commitments and you're able to work with the individual, just as a real quick anecdote, the people at the University of Leicester, after the changes were made, who came up to thank me the following week, were all the portering staff who no longer had to lift boxes and crates up and down steps, because there were ramps and lifts where there were no ramps or lifts previously. I just thought I'd share that with you because I was really popular with the portering staff and others.
Oh, thank you, Faisal. And Lady Marie?
Yeah, my experience in higher education, I would say, as Faisal says, there's some good practices and there are some that are really bad. But for me, because I look at things in a way that maybe the university itself will have the issues, but in regards to support for people with spinal cord injury or any other disabled person who have the capacity to go to university, the support there's a lot of support. I mean, you have the disabled students allowance, which pays for someone to accompany you to university, take the notes. You get equipment that you can record and the lectures. Like Faisal, my university, if their lectures were in rooms that are upstairs, they would bring everything downstairs to ensure that I was on the ground floor, because obviously they have to think about fire risks. And so I had everything put in place. They even paid for transport to take me from home to university and back. So the support is out there, you just need to know where to look.
Thank you, Lady Marie. Gary and Rupert. So, well, Rupert, you're not muted, so do you want to go first? Then I'll come to you, Gary.
Yeah, okay. So analogous experience to fire is also my spinal cord injury caused me to take a year's sabbatical from my degree. I was at one of the Oxford colleges, they built in the 1600s, not exactly wheelchair friendly, but they converted the downstairs room to make it ensuite for me. And I'm pleased to say, when I looked at the newsletter from the college only last week, they were advertising the fact that they got an accessible room on the ground floor. This is now, what, 35 years later on. So that's great. Going back to those distant dark ages, I used to record lectures on a tape recorder, which I used to play back laboriously in my room and transcribe, along with photocopies of notes from other students, which meant I actually had a very good set of notes by the time I'd finished. But that's how it could be. It was done in those days. But now, in this post-COVID world, which Faisal alluded to, it would be so easy now for higher education to integrate students with very high levels of disability by using the MS Teams, for example, or the ability you've got on Zoom here to record the meeting, i.e. the lecture, and then for the student to have access to it. So that's a real plus that's come about through the post-COVID world. In terms of the employment situation, access to work is clearly one of the key factors, and that's been alluded to. I think we need as an organisation to increasingly put pressure on the government to stop being so stingy with that and stop making cuts to access to work provision, because it does cost a lot of money to make adaptations for high-level injury. But if an individual, for example, could be working from home for 2 or 3 days a week, not needing to travel into the office, but then traveling in some days, again, that flexibility which we've now seen can work in the post-COVID era, it should be a great advantage.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rupert. And Gary, you get to sum up as well.
Yeah, I don't have any personal experience of going to university as a student, but for the last 10 years, I've been going into universities as a guest speaker. And I've seen the differences. I mean, I say when 10 years ago, when I was getting there and they were having to carry me up steps to get me to the lecture theatre to deliver my presentation on, living with spinal cord injury. And it's like, well, just come and watch me get lifted in. There is my experience. To now go into these amazing new built facilities where we're talking to physios, OTs, nurses, and not only just talking to them, but then I'm doing wheelchair sessions with them and going into the practical rooms and demonstrating how I go from lying to sitting. And obviously this is just how I do it, not an SIA recommended way or a Southport recommended way, the spinal unit I went to. So the change that I've seen with education is that they are reaching out more to get lived experience and not just, here's a case study, let's study spinal cord injuries, but bringing in people like myself who live with incontinence, live as a wheelchair user, I'm coming in to talk all about my life. And now we are part of the curriculum at the Walton Centre in Liverpool, where I'll be going in, or me or my volunteer will be going in every 2 weeks to deliver a session to 15 students at a time, instead of just going in and doing 150 students, you know, to make it a bit more intimate, so they can really, you know, ask us those questions. And because as everyone is on the call today who's got a spinal cord injury, I can probably profess that they will answer anything. And I mean anything, no matter, I see everyone nodding, no matter how intimate, no matter how degrading you think it is, they will answer, because, you know, that's how a carer is going to improve their quality of life. Whether it is, you know, learning how to manage their bowels, their bladder, assisting with their sexual life, obviously not as a participant, but that's a whole other conversation. But this is the reality of the situation, is that, you know, these people, we rely on unloading absolutely everything and it being accepted, and as that's what it is. You know, how can you help and assist? So that's all I want to add.
Brilliant, thank you, Gary. I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to move on to the final question, just because I want to make sure we answer all of the questions as thoroughly as we can for you. So the last question is, do you have any thoughts on the portrayal of people with a spinal cord injury in the media? At all. So, Gary, off you go.
Yes, I do. So SIA has been involved with a number of soaps over the years. I personally went down to Hollyoaks to assist with one of their storylines, and we managed to extend it to, I think, 3 months. Instead of it being, I think they wanted it 3 weeks. The guy fell into a pit, broke his back, was completely paralysed, and miraculously was going to be walking again 4 weeks later. And despite everything we did, we went through what the biggest issues were, how someone would be reacting to the news of not only immobility, but incontinence, sexual dysfunction, self-esteem, confidence issues, vulnerability. They never once saw him in a wheelchair. He was always sat on a settee or sat on a bed, and now made them a full recovery. Saying all that, since then, I do believe that the image of disability has massively changed, and it is thanks to the likes of Adia Depatans and Steve Browns, the lady from BBC Breakfast, I can't remember her name, but, you know, getting disability out there, and not just as a gimmick or as, you know, a box to tick, but these are interesting people making a difference, you know, doing their job. I think it's on the rise as far as our disability reputation goes, but a lot more can be done yet.
Thank you, Gary. Daniel, thumbs up next.
So over the years, I've had a number of conversations with either people who produce television shows or television channels. Before I worked at SIA, I won a competition to meet the cast of Hollyoaks. Gary, that was 19 years ago, and at that time there was a wheelchair user, and in a drunken bar in Liverpool I tried to get the producer to be brave, and this was, I was only injured for a year or two at this point, to be brave and actually take on the challenge of representing a wheelchair user who doesn't suddenly miraculously, oh, I'm walking, and he was very rude. He was very rude to me. I think he came over and said, Dan, do I produce wheelchair oaks? And I said no, and then that, you can guess how the rest of the conversation went after that. I'd already written to Hollyoaks, funnily enough, at that time. And around that time, there was a character in EastEnders, and they broke their back and they ended up walking around. Bruda knows, she's a big EastEnders fan. Nasty Nick Cotton, that was at the time. And exactly as you say, Gary, you know, it's still happening now. I think there was a brief period when, rather than having people miraculously walking, we would all trundle off to Switzerland and get euthanasia instead. But I do think things are changing. And the most recent conversation I had with someone from Channel 4 a couple of years ago, I said, look, you know, I need to give you a credit here. I think things were improving, because there is no reason why you couldn't have a disabled person reading the news, reading the weather, presenting a sports television program, presenting a quiz program, being a character in a soap opera. You know, there is no reason why you can't do that. And I think the problem is that disabled people are always linked to disability. I can't just be, oh, there's a new villain in EastEnders. He happens to be in a wheelchair, but he's not a villain because he's in a wheelchair. He's a villain because he's a bit of a criminal or whatever it is. So I said to this television executive, look, you know, I can appreciate the fact that things are actually improving. You could see that disabled people are getting more into Channel 4 television programs like First Dates, which are really popular, and things like that, not just in their own kind of ghetto of a very specific program. Called something, I can't remember what it's called. And she said to me, well, I'm glad you say that, Dan, because all the market research we do says people find disability depressing. And that completely blew the wind out of my sails. And I can only assume that the people who are responding to that market research are thinking of programs which are representing you know, probably very medicalized, very much about the disability, very much about their lives or some kind of like medical problem that they've got that they're trying to get treatment for, as opposed to something like The Last Leg, which is a really popular comedy show. And that's not representing disability, it has disabled people on it, and they happen to mention disability. So I think things are getting better, but I think it's both our portrayal and actually what people perceive our portrayal to be on the media as well, which is a problem. But I also think people only become familiar with disability if they are seeing us day to day in supermarkets, next to them trying to get something off the shelf, in jobs with them, on the same television programs that they are on, in the same newspapers, in the same magazines. That's the only way, and we'll get there in the end. Things are way better than they were 20 years ago, but they are also rubbish. Lecture over.
No, good thoughts there, Dan. We've got Faisal and Lady Marie, and then I'll come to you as well, Hash, okay? So Lady Marie, would you like to go next?
Yes. I suppose like my colleagues before me, we all had a stint on TV with soaps. Mine was EastEnders, and I was fortunate to go to the studio and trying to show them how to transfer from the chair to the sofa and so on. But you know, it was really good meeting from the car. However, since 2012, everyone thought that, okay, 2012, show the Paralympics how good we are, and you know that we can do things. Everyone got excited. And even to the point where advertisers such as teasers were using people with disabilities to advertise their products. And apparently they discovered that when they did those adverts, sales went up. The sales increased a lot. So it just shows that we can make a fool of ourselves, just the same like everyone else. You know, that girl having the spasm and all the Maltesers went everywhere. You know, things like that. And there was a program called The Bone Collector. I don't know if anyone's seen it. The guy was a tetraplegic. And apparently he was having an autonomic dysreflexia episode. And obviously he wasn't acting very well. My daughter, who knows what it's like, called me and said, Mom, look at this. I've recorded it for you. Is he having an autonomic dysreflexia attack? I said, yes. She said, but he's not doing it right, is he? And so when they are making these programs and they do get in touch, I think the best thing for them is to do research and actually portray it as it is. You know, so my colleagues here who've had kids, male who had kids, you know, I was watching a program recently, and this guy, he's a paraplegic now, he got shot in his back. And he was, oh, well, I won't be able to have sex anymore, won't be. And his poor wife, she had to suffer all of that. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you being so negative? You know, the possibilities are out there, but I suppose being in the UK, we look at things differently, but this is another country, and I'm just wondering if they still have that negative stereotype of what people, wheelchair users, can actually do. But the media needs a lot of work. They need to work on it.
Thank you, Lady Marie. Faisal, would you like to add to that?
Thank you. I would just support what Lady Marie said, and some of my colleagues just expand on it. I think certainly in 2012 with the Paralympics in London, I think what we saw was a bit of a sea swell movement behind the positive imagery around disability, etc. Unfortunately, what we haven't then maintained is the kind of that sea swell of movement into seeing disabled people, especially spinal cord injured people, as real characters, and I use the term "real" with inverted commas there. Whenever you see people with spinal cord injury or things like that, they're often referred to as they've been so brave, they've been so heroic, and all they did was survive a car crash, for example, like in my case. That's not heroic or brave, that's survival, and that's what you do, you try to survive from something. And I think what we need to try to do is help the media industry, particularly the television film industry, with having people with disabilities across in all roles, not just in front of the camera. So you want people behind the camera, you want producers, directors, writers, editors, all of these things. And I think that's where we really need to make the change. And I mean, you just have to look at parallels with the Black Lives Matters movement, and you look at Hollywood and how that's taken the time to get where it has for black actors. So there's parallels and lessons to be learned, but we're still a long way off, because I think we still have this let's pat them on the head kind of syndrome. And I agree with Dan and I agree with Gary that things have moved, but they're in such small snapshots. And actually what we need to see is those bigger, real, larger-than-life characters coming to the screen. And I don't know if you're like me, but if you go to the pictures and you watch films on Netflix, some of the best films are the ones where you get authentic characters coming through the screen. And that's what we need in the disability world. I don't think we have enough of them. Writing is what's needed. Thanks, Breda.
Thank you, Faisal. Really insightful. So Harsh, did you want to ask a question or add to?
Oh yeah, just quickly add to what everyone said about the portrayal of people with disability in the media. So last week I was watching a television show about bloopers on kids television, and there was a segment on Kerry Burnell, who was a CBeebies presenter who was born with one arm, and a lot of parents were complaining that she was frightening their kids. But what other presenters defended her and said, well, in reality, your children are being taught by you. They're not actually afraid of her disability. So I think we do need to place a large emphasis on the portrayal of people with a disability in the media, and need to start educating more people. Like as Dan said, his experience with the Hollyoaks producer, I think that was a very bad experience and it shouldn't have happened, but we do need to start educating more and more people. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to interject there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it's staggering to hear that, but let's say a lot more education is definitely needed. Does anybody want to add anything else? We wrap up that question. Has everyone had their input?
I'd just like to say a few things.
So,
Is
yes,
that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know somebody who has worked in the film industry and stuff for media and films. It's all very well saying disabled people need to be in films and stuff. I know personally quite a lot of directors have actually tried getting disabled people into films and series on TV. The problem is, especially for somebody like me who's a C5 tetraplegic, I can't do an 18-hour-day film shoot. And realistically, that is what a time scale is on a major film. 18-hour filming days. There's no way I could do it, and most paraplegics couldn't do it either. In fact, the film, I can't remember what it's called. It's got Banksy in it. He's meant to be he's meant to be a spy. I can't think of the film, but I think the second film they had a lady who was meant to have 2 missing lower legs, and she had blades fitted on the bottom legs that were basically swords, so she'd be chopping everybody's head off. Now there was
the Kingsman, sorry.
That's
Kingsman.
the one, Kingsman. Now they're an absolute, I know for a fact they're an absolute uproar on disability people saying, why didn't you use disabled actor? I know for a fact that they interviewed several Paralympians with double amputees to be able to do that film, and none of them could do it, not because of the energy needed to do it, because they were training for the Paralympics. There was nobody available to do that film who had double amputation. So they had to use green screen and do it with an able-bodied actor. And there was uproar for that. So I just know that it's all very well getting disabled people into the industry, but realistically, you need the best person for the job. And realistically, the best person for the job in most cases is somebody who hasn't got a disability, playing somebody who has got a disability, but saying that they need to be educated in how to portray that disability properly on screen by people like us who have the disability, because they can get up quickly, although they're they pretend to be in a wheelchair. They don't have to take half an hour getting in and out of a car or something. They can just get up, get in, do the scene, get up, get out. As long as they're playing the disabled role authentically, I don't see a problem with it myself. And that is for most directors and producers as well.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Lady Marie, you popped your hand up. Did you want to add something?
But very quickly, I disagree with Martin. I think we there should be the ability to do reasonable adjustments in that there's such a thing as editing. So you maybe film the scene or whatever it may be, give you, if the individual needs time, and come back and do it another time. Because I watched the film Rare Window with Christopher Reeve. Yeah, I've watched the film where, you know, they disconnected his thing after he became injured, and he was able to do a full film, so it is possible. So I don't think with us not be given 18 hours, an 18 hours long stint is it's possible, but they can break it down in chunks.
They can do, depending on the type of film. I know for Pacific film scenes, when they filmed the Da Vinci Code in Lincoln here at the cathedral, they took 3 days to film that scene, and the scene is about 30 seconds long in the film, and it took them 3 days to film it because my sister was in it, and it was literally Tom Hanks running down the corridor, but it took them 3 days to film that just because of the lighting. If you don't get there on time and you miss that shooting day, that's it, the day's scrubbed.
Lots of interesting viewpoints on that. Any last thoughts on that question before we round that one off? No? Thank you all. I didn't know, did anybody want to go back to Faisal's question? I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start answering. Well, I wouldn't answer it, it's not my area of expertise. I didn't know if anybody wanted, it said, Rupert asked, is there an issue with the immunogenicity of the muscle adhesion protein in biomedical applications?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
So this muscle foot protein has not been shown to elicit any sort of immune response. Previous studies have shown that all cells can grow along it really well without having any sort of problems. So that's another reason why we chose it, because it's been shown to be biocompatible and non-immunogenic. So that's a further justification for our muscle foot protein choice.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. I just wondered if, Ali, if you wanted to put your, if you're happy to do so, email address in the group chat, because I just thought then if anybody wanted to come back to you with any further thoughts after this cafe.
I'll put in our official King's iGEM email, and then also I will put in a bunch of our social medias if you guys want to follow our journey up until fall. It would be great to hear from you guys or have any input that you have further down the line. We also would like, I'd like to put out like a warm thank you for just allowing us to come here and observe and answering our questions wholeheartedly. We really, like on behalf of my team and I think we can all say a big thank you.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to have you, and you're the next generation of biochemists and scientists, and I'm in awe of your intelligence, to be honest. So obviously, on behalf of everyone, absolutely all the very best of your studies. We do wish you all really, really well, and thank you for you know, coming to us. We're a very open charity, and it's great to help educate and raise awareness of different people. So, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure. And Gary, you put your thumb up. Did you want to say?
No, I hit the clap thing. So it was just.
Oh, sorry.
I've not used these reactions before. It was a test just to see what I was expecting. Like some clapping hands in the corner, but no. It was
Sorry, Gary.
It was just in response to Alia's comments. Then, yeah, just saying, no, thank you and you're welcome.
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant, and thank you everyone for staying on us. So usually cafes take about an hour, but it's been fantastic that everybody's had the opportunity to take part and share their experiences with you all. So that's been great. And as I say, we will be we have been recording it, and we will share it on social media. So if you need to play it back and listen to it, then obviously that will Ali will send you a link to where it will be
on our
website, so you can then share it with the team. But yeah, you have my contact details, so if you need anything else in the future, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And as I say, all the very best with your studies.
Thank you so much, and I hope everyone's staying safe and well during these times. And if you guys, honestly, like, if you want to get in touch with us, our email and our social medias are down on the chat. So please, we would love to have a discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
See you all.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Bye.